Honoring his team's recent success in getting a very large contract and winning an important case. At the party, Regina is talking to another wife, and she sees Louis talking to, in a friendly and warm manner, to a member of his team who's pretty and younger. She notices Louis, stops her own conversation, goes to the bar, gets a drink, walks over to Louis, and in a very cold, detached voice, she demands to leave the party at once. Louis replies, "But we've just gotten here. I can't leave now. I'm expected to make the congratulatory toast." Regina seems chilly and distant for the rest of the evening. Then they leave the party and the fireworks start. They get in the car and they begin to argue, and the situation escalates. They come to a stop sign. Regina gets out of the car, refuses to get back into the car, and walks away. She attempts to reach her therapist, but is unsuccessful. So she goes to her mom's apartment and spends the night. The next morning, she goes to her scheduled appointment with her therapist, and she appears to be both despondent and detached. The session begins.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frank. I'm doing a mentalization-based treatment. So first off, what is mentalizing, mentalization? What mentalizing is actually understanding the actions, and we've heard about some actions already from Regina, of oneself and others in terms of mental states. So the basis of MBT, mentalization, focused based treatment, is to consider the mental processes in relation to the behaviors. So we're always trying to rekindle mentalizing when it may not be occurring, and try to maintain it when it otherwise may be lost. There are some dimensions that are useful to think about clinically. First off is self and other. If you're mentalizing, you have to represent your own mental processes and compare them and contrast them with your representation of someone else's mental processes, particularly in the interactional process with the patient. So both the patient and therapist have to be representing self and other, either themselves and the patient's mental processes, or the patient has to represent their own plus the mental processes of the therapist. So we're very keen that both mental processes are available for the therapy. So that's one dimension that is very important for this particular scenario. The second dimension is an emotional dimension, the affective experience of the patient or of yourself, and actually the understanding of that and representation of that, because affects actually have meanings, they have an understanding representation. I know that I'm angry and I represent that in some form. Okay. And the other side of that, of course, is sort of cognitive processes, the thought processes, which may also form part of that understanding of the current context and what's happening. So those are two major dimensions. The other dimensions are external and internal, and actually this is a focus of where you're trying to understand mental states. You can understand them from trying to look and understand the internal states of somebody by asking them, for example, about what's going on in their mind, or you can take things from how you observe them externally, their eye movements, how they sit, how they move, how they express themselves as a very external focus. And we all look externally and monitor externally, so both you and the patient will be doing that much of the time, and you will be making judgments on that, correct or incorrect. Your task for mentalizing is to work out how correct they are, how right and valid they are. So external, internal focus is distinctly important in this methodology. So what does this mean in therapy? In therapy, it's a focus on mental processes, focus on the emotional states that the patient experiences. You need to make sure that the therapist's mental processes are open to a large extent to the patient's. I have 3 minutes. I don't believe how time passes when you're enjoying it. 3 minutes is what I have. So you move, in fact, trying to seek out self and other experiences between you and the patient and about the actual events that they have. And the final thing we generate very early is crisis plans, if possible, because if something goes wrong, then you can actually refer back to your crisis plan with the patient and work out what went wrong.